The map in Deadlock holds a lot of secrets. In this video, we're gonna go over everything Deadlock Macro. How to fight, and when to take mid-boss, and finally to the shrines and patrons, and how you can use this knowledge to win more games. What's up fans, this is Metro, and welcome to the most detailed macro guide on YouTube. If you haven't checked out part 1, link in the description, goes over everything farming. Today, we're gonna talk about everything else. Walkers, earn, mid-boss, how to get in, head in fights, when to fight, when to push the enemy base, when to back out. And we're gonna start right away because there's gonna be a lot of things to talk about. And we're gonna start with the most common question I get always, which is, when do I actually take fights? And the simple answer is, whenever you have an advantage. And we're gonna go over every single advantage you can have in this game, and we're gonna explain every single one in detail. And the first one is gonna be very basic, which is you have a power spike. I'm sure you've heard of power spikes in Deadlock before. People talk about power spikes like the investment system where you buy an item and you get to the next level of investment. The main power spike that we have in the game right now is a 4.8k investment, and I'm sure you've heard of it, which gives you a lot of power, right? And on every character, especially in the early and mid game, eventually you will hit those power spikes, and it is true that your power at that point in time goes up significantly, which means you will be a lot stronger in fights, okay? And that doesn't only go for items, it also goes for maxing out abilities. Almost every character in the game has some really good max level abilities, and once you max them, you become a lot stronger, and it is on you to know, on your character in specific, what those abilities are. Usually when you follow a build of a pro player, a streamer, a very educated build, it's going to be very simple for you to line those up, because in those builds, the way they do it usually is you get the big power spike in items at the exact same time you get the big power spike in your level ups, because souls in Deadlock give you both XP and they give you money, right? So you can line them up to where once I max out Flawless Advance in this build, for example, is also usually the time where I get my full Spirit Spike and maybe some green items along the way, and that's when I know I'm strong. So, scenario number 1 in fights is simply when you have a power spike, when you feel more powerful than the enemy. That also means that if you're up in lane, right, if you win the laning stage and you have a lot of money, you should probably go and actively look for fights into the enemy jungle, or, you know, gank other lanes, because you're gonna be higher level, you're gonna have more items, enemy is gonna die easier, it's gonna be an easier time for you. Vice versa, that also means if you're behind, that's a time you really don't want to look for fights, and you should probably more react to the enemy. If you see the enemy be up in souls, a lot of the time, even up to the highest level, they will be aggressive on your side of the map and look for kills. And a lot of the time they will overchase, especially into walkers, which brings me to scenario number 2. You should always fight under objectives. Objectives help you in a major way. Guardians shoot the enemy, right? Especially in the early game, they're powerful. But walkers in specific, the longer the game goes, the tankier they are. The last walker has the most HP, if you guys don't know. Not only will they absorb a lot of damage, you can take cover behind them, they will also naturally give you resist, both bullet and spirit resist. I think they give around 15% of both right now, so you have those passively. It's like passively owning both Battle Vest and Enchanter's Emblem. And if you're behind, you can still take favorable fights. Even if you're behind in money, you're gonna be a lot more powerful under the Walker. Another point you should consider is ultimates, okay? There's a lot of ultimates in this game that are game-changing, game-deciding. If you look at the top of the screen during the game and just keep track of enemy ultimates and team ultimates, if at one point in time suddenly your team has like 5 ults and the enemy has like 1, if you take a big fight, chances are you will probably win, right? Because ultimates are so game-changing. On the other side, if the enemy has a lot of ults and your team really doesn't have a lot, you need to consider that also and play more passively. Otherwise, positioning. High ground is always strong on most heroes. High ground allows you to hit the enemy easier. It's going to be harder for them to chase you. They have to get up to the high ground to even get damage to you. And you can shoulder peek. Just like in shooters, you can corner peek and shoot enemies from above, and they're not going to be able to shoot back effectively. So positioning in terms of map geometry also really matters, and high ground is the number 1 thing I can give you. Another thing is veils. If you're sitting behind a veil that you can see through and the enemy can't see through, the one-sided veils, you're gonna have an inherent advantage in the fight, right? So be smart about how you engage in the fight. But in general, if you are ahead, you want to be the team that proactively looks for kills, proactively looks on the enemy side to steal jungle, and proactively denies enemies from farming, right? If you're ahead, you want to keep your lead, and the way you keep your lead is stealing the enemy side jungle and looking for kills on the enemy side of the map. Whereas if you're behind, you want to actively try to secure your own jungle without dying, okay? That being said, It brings me to my next point, and I mentioned it before. Do not push into walkers early. When do you want to push into walkers? This is like one of the really big pain points a lot of players have in this game. They are ahead in money, there's like not really much going on in the map, and you walk into a walker, you send like 3-4 people, the enemy defends, and you end up dying, and suddenly the game is even again. There's going to be 3 scenarios when you want to attack a walker. Scenario number 1 is you are up at least 2 players, okay? So that means if you just got a kill in the enemy jungle or 2, and you are in a 6v4, right, or in a 5v3, that is around the time in the mid game when you can attack a walker or attack multiple walkers at once, and the enemy is going to have a hard time defending. They're going to have less numbers than you, and the inherent advantage they have in defending the walker is going to be diminished, okay? So that's kind of how you secure walkers, and you reduce the risk of dying for them, okay? That's scenario number 1. Scenario number 2 is if all 3 of your lanes are pushing into the enemy side and ideally pushing into all enemy walkers. In that scenario, even in a 6v6, if everyone is alive, you should really tell your team to push multiple walkers at once. Why is that? The enemy now has to deal with 3 walkers at once. So ideally they have to do a perfect 2-2-2 split to defend all walkers equally, without losing a walker, right? And chances are, if the enemy has to react and coordinate that kind of defense, if there's pressure on all lanes, they're gonna have a very hard time doing that, even up to Eterna 6, even up to the highest rank in the game. What usually happens is either the enemy overcommits on one side, sends like 4 or 5 people, and your team that pushes that side dies, but the other 2 walkers die, or they forget about one side in general and the walker just dies for free and you get a free walker. Usually the scenario is ideal for the team that pushes. Which brings me to a general point I mention in almost every video. That's why it's so essential to have your creeps pushed first, right? If you don't push your creep waves in general, the enemy is going to have more map control and you're going to have less of those scenarios, and the enemy is going to have more of those scenarios where they can take more of your map, right? Like, take care of your walkers, always push creep waves first. Scenario number 3 for pushing walkers is if you are a split pusher and there is a bigger fight on the other side of the map. What is split pushing? It's in the name, split. You split from your team, okay? Let's say there's a fight breaking out on the right side of the map, like multiple people, you see at least 5 enemies fighting and your team is fighting on that side of the map. It's usually at that point very safe to push the left side walker on the other side of the map alone. Why is that? The maximum amount that can defend the walker is 1 person. So worst case scenario, you're gonna be in a 1 versus 1, but a lot of the time that last person doesn't even show up anyways. They're probably AFK farming the jungle somewhere, they're maybe pushing the middle lane, or they're about to join that big team fight, right? And you might say, but Metro, am I not letting my team down if I don't join that big team fight on the right side? And that really depends on the scenario of the game, but usually if you can kill the walker fast enough, it's always worth it going for the walker. Worst case scenario, 1 person defends, you get the walker and you might even die for it, but that's always worth it. It's almost always, 99% of the time, it's worth dying for a walker, okay? What are good split pushers? Split pushers in general are characters that have a lot of damage in their auto attacks, because walkers don't really take a lot of spirit burst damage. They have more resist against spirit. Good split pushers would be Warden, McGinnis, Wraith, or Graves and Celeste are 2 of the new characters that are actually really good. And the reason Celeste is so strong at walkers, she can put her 1 on the walker, and the Light Eater debuff works on the walker, so she can left click down the walker really fast, okay? That doesn't mean you can't split push on any other character, by the way. It works on almost every character. If you see an opening and the walker is undefended and your team or the enemy team is occupied somewhere else on the map, going for the walker almost always worth it. So just to summarize, 3 scenarios. Scenario number 1, you won a big team fight and the enemy is down players. Scenario number 2 is you split pushing, and scenario number 3 is all lanes are pushing into the enemy walker. Otherwise, you don't want to push walkers, ever, okay? That's how you die. If the game is even if you're a bit ahead and you don't have rejuves, you do not want to push them, which we'll talk about rejuve in a bit. That's another scenario that comes in, and that's why Deadlock is such an amazing game, because there's so many possibilities. In the mid game, it might not even be worth pushing the walker after a big teamfight win, because you can take mid boss. Getting to the next objective, which is the urn. And again, I'm going to condense this down to 3 scenarios for you, okay? When should you pick up the urn? The answer is almost always, okay? Urn right now gives you a lot of money, no matter if you're ahead or behind. But there's different reasons you want to pick it up, but I'll explain to you why you want to pick it up basically all the time if you are on the earn side. In an even scenario. Even scenarios means there's 10 or less % net worth difference. When you pick up the earn, the transfer or the drop-off point will be on the other side of the map in the middle. You want to pick this up because you can run it and you will force the enemy to react to you, right? Either they have to chase you down, waste valuable time to even get to you, or they don't react to you at all, you get free money, or you can force an earn fight, right? And even if you feel like your team is not helping you, if you're getting close to the drop-off spot and enemies show up with a lot of people and your team doesn't, you can still hold the earn, run backwards to your walker, and sit there safely, do nothing for a bit, and the enemy is going to be forced to sit in that lane because they know as soon as they leave, you can drop off the earn and get free money. So it's almost always better for your team to have control of the earn. That's why you want to always pick it up, even if it's an even earn. Now, even more important, if you are behind more than 10%. So you are the team that's behind and you're losing. The earn gives now even more money. There is a thing in this game called comeback gold. The way it works is the further you are behind, the more gold you get from every source, but the main massive source of comeback souls is really the earn, and it will get you a lot more money than usual if you are behind. Plus, the earn drop-off spot is going to be on your side of the map, right? So it's going to be very, very easy to get there, and it's going to be very hard for the enemy to contest you because there's usually like a walker around there, and even if there's no walker left, the enemy will have to go deep into your territory to engage you, which should give you and your team a favorable fight, okay? So especially if you're behind and you see you're behind more than 10%, try to get the earn and try to get the earn in the drop-offs. That's like the main comeback mechanic right now. Like that's like the only way in high rank people come back, right? You won't come back by just farming or sitting in base. The only chance you get is the earn, but more often than not, even in high rank games, the enemy will not be able to contest you, or they forget to contest you, and suddenly the game is back to even. Like 1 or 2 earns and the game is back to even and you can win. Okay, so be the hero for your team, pick up the earn if you're behind. Now, if you're ahead, you should also pick up the earn, but not to deposit it usually. As I just explained, it is very hard if the earn is on the other side of the map, on the enemy side, to drop it in, right? It's very risky, you have to go very deep. So what you want to do in that scenario, especially if you're a support and you don't really want to farm a lot, you pick up the earn and you run it to your base, right? Or you keep it in your possession just to deny the enemy that comeback gold. I see on low ranks, it really doesn't happen a lot. In fact, in low ranks in general, people don't run the earn enough. But denying the enemy the comeback gold is also how you get your team to stay ahead. You can also be the hero, even if it's an unthankful job. Just run the earn to your base, keep it there. After a while it will deal damage to you, by the way. If you hold the earn for too long, it will deal damage, but like just denying the enemy the earn pickup is good. And if you really are that far ahead and you get kills, you can decide to walk into the enemy side of the map and get that earn in as well, right? Like if you're far enough ahead, but it's a very risky play until you're super far ahead, okay? And that is everything earn. It's really not that hard. Pick it up and run it or protect it. That's it, right? As long as it's in your possession, it's good. Having the earn makes your team stronger because the enemy has to invest resources to get there, and if they don't, you get more money for the entire team and your team will win more. We are now getting to mid-boss. And I mentioned this earlier, we were talking about how in the mid-game it might be not a good choice to push a walker. Mid-boss is the strongest objective in the game right now. It gives the team that kills it gold, but if you secure the rejuves as well, it will give you up to 3 extra lives that you can use in a fight. And you could imagine in a 9v3, or no, 9v6, sorry, you will most likely win the fight, even if you kind of misplay, right? So the mid-boss is really what allows you in the mid-game to securely push walkers, and then in the later game to securely push into the enemy base. It's like the main tool you have to use, other than being very far ahead in gold, to get the end, the finish line. When should you take mid-boss? I'll condense this down again to 3 main ways to play the mid-boss. Example number 1 is after 20 minutes roughly, the respawn time of enemies is going to be long enough to where if your team walks into mid-boss fast and kills it, it's usually enough time to where you can secure the mid-boss for free, or at the very least, the enemy is going to be down players and you're going to have a good time to contest or fight in the mid-boss and probably secure more of the rejuve than the enemy, okay? So scenario number 1, 20 minutes or longer. If you get at least 2 kills, you want to go into mid-boss. Scenario number 2 is you can take mid-boss in a 6v6 if the enemy is out of position. If the enemy is running the comeback urn that I just talked about, and they're all focused on, let's say you're ahead and the enemy is all focused on securing the urn, you can tell your team, hey, they're dealing with the urn right now, just go mid right now and kill it at the same time. And what usually happens is enemy will secure the urn, but you will get a mid-boss in as a trade, and then you have 3 extra lives, which is worth than the money they just got from the urn, okay? So that's scenario number 2. And then scenario number 3 is if you are very far ahead, okay? And if you have a lot of ults over the enemy, one or the other, right? So if you have game-deciding mid-fight ultimates, like Lash ult, Dynamo ult, right? You have an Ivy stun, Abrams ult, any big ults that can secure the urn, Yamato ult, and you are a bit ahead. That is where you can take the mid-boss fight, especially if the enemy is down ultimates, right? Like, so if the enemy feels like weaker, is a good time to take mid-boss, especially if you see on the map that the enemy is kind of split. Like if there's one guy on the left side farming and one guy on the right side farming, and your entire team is kind of around middle, go into mid-boss pit, force a mid-boss fight, and more often than not, you will be the one to come out on top in that fight. Opposite scenario, when should you contest mid-boss? And the answer is here, very simple, it's almost always, okay? If you can get there in time, it's almost always worth contesting, okay? Even if you're down a player or two, if the enemy is in the mid-boss pit, they will take damage from the mid-boss, and you have chances to outplay the enemy. Right? You can go in, stun them, you can parry on the rejuve crystal. There is outplay potential. And I'm not gonna lie to you, if you are contesting and you down people, more often than not, it will not go in your favor. But the alternative scenario is even worse, where you just give them free rejuves for free. And at that point, you're kind of fucked, right? Because if the enemy has 3 rejuves and you don't have anything, especially if you're behind, then you really have to sit in base, because then the enemy can just take any fight. And then they're going to push into your base, right? Or take the urn, get more ahead, steal your entire jungle, and that's when it's very, very far. Very, very hard to come back, okay? So you should contest almost always, but especially if you're up ultimates. If you are too far from the mid-boss area and you know you can't get there in time, that's when you take the second best option, which is usually killing a walker that's on that side of the map. Like trading mid-boss for a walker or 2 is not horrible. If you get 2 walkers, it's actually a good trade, right? Or run the urn again, right? Like if you can't get there, it's unlucky, it's gonna feel bad, and you're probably gonna fall behind for it, but like make the best out of it, okay? So that is mid-boss. I love providing educational content, and it really means a lot to me that it resonates with so many people. And with the Deadlock Academy, we are gonna provide the best content on the internet for coaching in Deadlock, period. I offer classes every week to help you climb in no time, and we also have many more courses by hand-picked pro players and pro coaches. And there is really no better people I could think of to help you teach the game to make you a better player. We also do weekly coach scrims where you jump in to improve while just playing the game. Right now there's a 30-day free trial. Just try it out, see how it goes, and I think the results will speak for themselves. When should you attack the enemy base? Right now, since the latest patch, they redesigned the base. It's very hard to crack, right? So again, I'll give you 3 rough estimates on when you can attack, but it's very hard to say in that case in specific, because the base is so hard to crack. Point number 1 is you're up at least 35 to 40k. That is usually when you're strong enough to where you can, if you play it safe, walk into the enemy base, attack and siege the enemy base without instantly dying. Even then, it might backfire, okay? So scenario number 2 is you're up in money and you have rejuves, okay? That's when it's like pretty safe to attack finally, where ideally you are up that net worth, like the 35, 40k, and you have rejuves. Now, even if you have 3 rejuves and you're only up 10 to 20k, if the enemy defends properly, you will probably lose the fight and give the enemy a chance to come back. I'm not saying it can't happen, but that is really how it's working right now. So if you get the mid-boss and you have 3 rejuves and you're not up 40k, what should you do instead? This is where you really take the rest of the map. You make sure every walker is dead, get the last walker in a team fight, and if the enemy is really sitting in base, you take their entire jungle. And you can do that very safely now because you have those extra lives, until you have a significant lead of at least 35 to 40k. And that's when you want to decide to attack their base. If you can't get there, let's say you secured rejuve and then you are up 20k and then you farm and then the rejuve runs out. What do you do next? You can look for pickoffs, but usually you chill, farm a bit more and wait for the next mid-boss. That's why games last so long. right now, even on high level as well, because it's, again, really, really hard to crack the enemy base, okay? Just to reiterate, 3 points, either you're up 40k, or you have 3 rejuves, or ideally both, is when you want to attack the enemy base and siege the enemy base. Now, how do you siege the enemy base safely? How do you take a fight in the enemy base? You want to have your team usually coordinated to get one shrine together and then the other shrine together. The reason being is the enemy has 2 pathways where they can get to the shrines very easily. So a good enemy team will send 6 people to one side and kill someone of your team there if you split, okay? So make sure you go together, clean up one shrine first, then the other, and then you all focus together the patron. After you down the patron, so you get phase 1 down, there is a 15-second downtime until you can attack the final phase. And the final phase is the hardest thing to crack because you need to be in the pit. The patron can curse you, deal damage to you, and the enemy can just get in really easily and defend, right? And if there's more than one person of the enemy in the pit, you cannot damage the patron. It will be invulnerable, right? So you need to clean up the enemies first. So what do you do if you down the first phase patron? This is where you want to check how the health of your team is looking. How many rejuves do you have left? How is the respawn of the enemies? If the enemy has 6 players up and they can defend as 6, you want to back out and then go again, right? Next fight after you get like a pick off or 2. If you have no rejuves left or there's a lot of people low on your team, you want to back out. Finishing the game right now is very sketchy. That's the one time you want to be careful in this game and play passively, because if the enemy turns that fight around, especially in the late game, and you're dead for like 90 seconds, that's like a way back for the enemy into the game. And I've seen a lot of games turn around 180 and do a complete backflip because one team got too greedy and tried to finish too early, okay? So really try to be coordinated. In general, otherwise, aggression is king. Putting pressure on the enemy at every stage in the game, if we're talking laning stage or even mid game, is king, okay? You always want to make sure to play proactive. If you are the team that has to react to everything, if there's like a wave pushing your green walker and then there's a wave pushing your blue walker and then you have to react and react and react, you're gonna fall behind, you're more likely to make mistakes, and you don't have a plan, you're just reacting to what you see on the screen. The team that has a plan and plays proactively, even if it's risky, right, even if it's aggressive, is usually the team that ends up winning, okay? And in later mid-game fights, if there's really nothing else to do on the map, I always tell my team the first thing I go for, and it works every time in Eternus, is we should look for a kill first, okay? If you're getting to mid to late game, and mid-boss is about to spawn, or you really need a kill on the enemy team, you go as 6 and you look for a kill. And that's how you win the game. And even in the mid game, again, can only reiterate, make sure the waves are pushed, okay? If you are strong, if you're up in net worth, if you just bought a big item, is when you wanna be aggressive, when you wanna invade the enemy jungle, when you wanna look for kills. Don't spend all day farming, okay? Unless you're the hard carry. And even on the hard carry, there comes a point where you have enough farm, you want to start fighting, okay? If you're not sure about how to play your character in specific, I have a complete roles guide that I'm going to link in the description below. And that really explains how every single character is being played in Deadlock, because some characters want to farm and some characters want to perma-fight. This was more the overall macro. And again, if you're wondering about farming and how to efficiently gain souls in anything that is not team fighting, check out my part 1 of this macro guide, which is everything farming, from how to get jungle creeps to how to farm sinners efficiently to how to get the most money possible, okay? And I hope that was somewhat helpful. I know it was a pretty long yap. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and until next time, see you friends, bye bye.
Metro finally got his patch. Now he's gonna run it back.